Hey everybody, thanks for checking out my video. Today we're working on a 2005 Dyna Wideglide that has a primary leak. I worked on the bike a few weeks ago. It had a leak. Actually, somebody else had fixed the primary and the owner said it was leaking after that. And so I tore into it. I actually found a gasket out of place behind the inspection cover on the primary. And so I figured that was a leak. And he rode it for a while and that did not fix it. So now that we know what kind of fluid is in the primary, the fluid that's leaking is red, and he has red, I think it's Bel-Ray gear oil in the transmission. So we believe that the problem is there's a real small main seal on the main shaft of the transmission. So I believe that's the problem. So just wanted to show you guys the bike and the lift, and we'll get started on it. I will try to set you up where I can see me using my lift. This is my handy airlift. It also has the side extensions on it, which are real nice because I can put a four-wheeler or lawnmower, just about, anything that'll fit up there that's under, I think this will lift 1,000 pounds. And so this has been super handy for me to have over the years, especially for motorcycles. It's so nice to be able to get something up in the air. So I'll see if I can get you guys set up here. My Super Duty magnet here. There we go. I'll throw the lock down. And I'll get a drain pan under it and we'll get the oil drain. Usually these have like a 3/16 hex drain plug in them. This is the primary here. This is the derby cover, and this is the inspection cover. Under the inspection cover, there's two short bolts that just go into the cover, and two long bolts that go through the inspection cover and into the inner primary cover. This is the outer primary, that's the inner primary. The engine sprocket shaft comes through the inner primary, and the compensator and front sprocket is on here. There's a chain in here that you'll see in a minute. And then the chain goes around the clutch basket and through the clutch and in, powers through the transmission. So behind this cover here, you can take this off without losing any oil if the oil is at the proper level. Behind here you can get to the primary chain adjuster. This has a cover gasket, and then there's two small gaskets that go under the cover and on the inner primary. I'll show you in a minute. That was actually what was leaking before. Under the derby cover you can also pull this without losing fluid if the bike is straight up like it is now. This has a gasket, and then in here you can get to your inner clutch adjustment. There's a clutch adjuster on the cable for the free play, and this is where you set your primary adjustment on the clutch in here. So I'll set you guys up and we'll get the oil draining. Like I said, this These usually, 05 usually has a 3/16 Allen. I used to always put a 30 Torx in there because they're kind of a goofy, I don't know why they did that, they're kind of a goofy size. This one was replaced with a real high-end drain plug with a heavy duty magnet and a hex head on it, which is nice. So there's the primary drain plug. There's a little bit of metal on there, but that's normal for the primary, and especially this was the first time that this heavy duty magnet was in here, so it was probably picking up a lot of stuff that normally wasn't getting picked up by that magnet. So the inspection and the derby cover are all 27 Torx. I'm going to use my impact. There's the cover, and this is the gasket. This is Harley's. It's got an aluminum core, and it's got a kind of a rubber coating on there. They work really well. Pull the inspection cover. Said those two are short. These two are long. They go into the inner. And that has just like a perimeter gasket on it. So if you were doing regular service, there is your primary chain. Okay, the first thing we want to do is over on the right hand side of the bike. This is a battery box, battery cover. It's chrome on this bike. Some of the, well, even on this bike, but some of the plainer Dynas, the battery is exposed, so just a top cover on it. This bolt is a lock screw that locks the battery box up in place, and this screw here is a kind of like a jam screw. It's longer and it lets the battery box drop down so you can tilt the battery out. So I already loosened this screw. We'll take this is the lock screw, take that out, and then same thing here, I already loosened it. This is the jam screw, I guess you'd call it, but I don't know if you can see it way in there. You can see the tip of it turning. You can back that way out and then you just pull down on that. There it goes. And then you slip the lid off, pull the cover off. This one looks like it's, I guess maybe I thought it was acid, but it might be just from the plastic. Let's see if I can get you set up here. Just lift the battery up over this lip and sneak it out, and there's your negative post, and it's 10 millimeter. This one happens to be a aftermarket battery, but they're all 10 millimeter. You always take the negative off. And in this case, He's got a battery tender on it. That's a small lead. And this goes, yeah, this goes right to the starter. So I'm actually just gonna put some tape around those. Actually, I'm gonna put a rag on this just in case. You just don't want something making contact while you got your hands on the end of the starter over there, because I'll show you the starter jack shaft when we get that to that part. But I put a little bit of tape over this, just a little insurance, and then tuck that cable out of the way, and then I just slip that back in there just so it's not going to fall out. And we'll go back over on the other side. Okay, now back over on the primary side. The battery's unhooked. First thing we want to do is loosen the chain tensioner. It's 9/16 and I have a 1/2 inch on there. Just loosen it up and just let it fall to the bottom, and you got plenty of slack. The next thing we do is loosen up the clutch adjuster. Usually I use a wrench. The wrench I have isn't really long enough or offset enough. You need something with a nice offset and that's got some length to it. So to break it loose, I just use the socket. And then I'll show you what I usually do when I take it apart. So I back the nut off. You can back the nut off as far as you want, really. But then I usually only back this off a turn or a turn and a half. Right there. So then we put my safety glasses on. Snap ring pliers. And take this snap ring out. I usually just cover it up because they kind of go wherever they want. That one came out good. Take the snap ring out. Take the clutch adjuster out. The clutch adjuster has a countersunk end on it that mates with a push rod. The push rod is just loose in the transmission. You could actually pull it out and look at it if you wanted to, but usually nothing goes wrong with them. This has a flat on it and some space around it where it goes through the transmission, and then the clutch push rod inside there is quite a bit smaller than that. The primary actually vents through the adjuster around the push rod and into the transmission. So there's no other hole in the primary to vent it all. If it builds up any pressure at all, the pressure goes through this hole and into the transmission and out the top of the transmission. So the next thing we do is going to pull this primary components off. The clutch hub nut is 1 3/16 inches. The compensator nut is 1.5 inches. I can do the compensator first. The compensator is 1.5 inches, and this is regular thread, right hand thread. So this will come off counterclockwise, lefty loosey. The compensator is a spring pack that there's this ramped piece here that mates with another ramped piece on here, and it's all spline together. This can actually move on there, and you see it's coming in and out, and that works up against the spring pack in here. This compensator assembly is constantly working, and it takes the engine pulses out of the rest of your drivetrain. So while the engine is idling and it's not real smooth, or when you're taking off, this spring pack assembly is constantly giving, and it's making the transition into your clutch and your transmission smoother, so you're not getting hard pulses through your driveline. It would be noticeable on like an open belt primary, or maybe even the older bikes like Knucklehead, Flatheads. I'm not sure if a Panhead had a compensator. The older bikes didn't have a compensator, so these are a lot smoother. Now take off the clutch hub. Like I said, that's 1 3/16", and this is left-hand thread. So this is going to come off clockwise. And that's full of Loctite. You can smell it, and I can see it on there. But that's good. I usually put clean both of these threads. I put red Loctite on both. Just a couple drops on here, and I put quite a bit on the compensator. And then this just slides off of the sprocket shaft. You can do it at the same time. And this slides off of the clutch if the main shaft isn't. Sometimes if the Loctite gets in there, it'll be stuck. So carefully. Let me get under here. There it comes. Yeah, that's really unusual. But like I said, they put a bunch of Loctite on there. Never got in there. And I'm trying to be careful because otherwise it's going to come flying off of there. Go back in. Maybe I can work it back and forth a little bit. There it goes. Set that on the drain pan. Yeah, it looks fine. I think they just got a little Loctite in there. So that's the main shaft. That goes right into the transmission. Actually, I know why this is tight now. This is a 6-speed, and the Screaming Eagle 6-speeds were known to be a little extra snug on this outer piece of this spline. Okay, now this is back over on the battery side. The starter bolts onto the inner primary with a bolt. There's a bolt right there, and then there is a, I don't know if you can see it in there. Yeah, there's a bolt right there. That is a 1/4" Allen socket. I use a ball Allen. So fit that in there. Let me see if I can. You don't really have to take it out, and you don't have to take the starter all the way out, because if you did, you'd have to unhook the positive cable. But we just reach in here, get that other one. Of course, that one's stuck on the socket, but there's the bolt. And you just slide the starter out a little bit and it dropped out of the inner. Now we can go back over on the other side. And these are, these take a 1/2 inch socket. They are 5/16. There's one here, one down here on the outside of the primary, and then the inside bolts, 2 here and 3 here. The outside ones have flat washers on them, and the inside ones have these locking safety tabs. And that's it. We usually just give her a love tap. There was another lock. And wheel her off of there. Okay, so we got the inner off. There is a O-ring on the front. This is a twin cam, so there's an O-ring on the front. On the back there is on the inner primary bearing, there's a seal here. That's supposed to look like that. It actually looks like it's in backwards, but that's how it goes in. And then there is a seal for the jack shaft. You can see that that's all dry right there, and this looks dry down here, so this seal is most likely good. So there's no oil. If this seal was bad, there would be oil streaming down here and it would be all over here, but you see that the oil puddled right there. That's from, there's a little main shaft seal inside that, the end of that main drive gear. So the inner race for the primary bearing has to come off to get to that seal, and that seal is kind of a little bugger to get out of there. And it also looks wet here around the shift shaft, so I had to pull the shift arm off and change that shift shaft seal out also. So there's the shifter. That's the shift shaft seal. This is the end of the shift pawl arm that goes into the transmission and into the shift drum. This bolt here, I think it's a 50 Torx with like a 7/16 thread, and that's just a pin on the end. That goes into the shift pawl return spring. So the spring has a gap in it, and this goes in there and goes right in between the spring. So when you shift down, it catches the one, and it gives you your spring return up, and when you go the other way, it gives you your spring return back. See that? You push it down, that springs back up, and you go up like you're shifting up, and then that spring returns back to neutral. And there's also a neutral detent on the shift drum. So that's the click that you feel when you go into neutral. That's the neutral detent in the drum. Here is the coupler that goes on the starter. I know the lighting isn't that good, but you see how it goes all the way onto the starter, right up against the starter. And that's how you know if it's on right. There's a snap ring inside there, and if you got that on the wrong way, see, it doesn't go on all the way. So that goes this way. Usually don't even take that off, it'll just sit there, but if you were sliding the starter out and it fell down, you would know which way it goes. And while you're in here, you can look at your belt and pulleys. The belt looks good. Got decent tension on it. The sprocket looks really nice. The Dynas have, I believe the Dynas have a bushing in here on the front. This is the front of the swing arm pivot. I think they have a bushing in here. So we'll have to do some cleanup and inspection, and go from there. Get all this stuff cleaned up and make sure I got all the parts, and I'll get some video of pulling this off. So we'll see you back here in a few. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to take that shift arm off. With this thing sitting there neutral, if you've done it a few times, you get an idea where this arm is pointing, but just for a demonstration, if you wanted to know absolutely, just to be sure when you take it apart, it only takes a few seconds to mark them. So you can just take a marker and go along the edge, and then you have a reference to where that arm was. This is a 1/4 inch Allen bit, and these things are usually really tight. They usually snap pretty good. Hopefully not snap off. But we just got Loctite on it. Yeah, it's got red Loctite on it. And then this just slides off. The bolt, there is a groove in the shaft, so when this bolt's in there, it locks it. Not only is it pinching it on the shaft, but it locks it from walking in and out. So you just have to wiggle that a little bit to get it off of there. And yeah, it's got fluid on it, so that's leaking. So we'll replace those seals, and then we should be good to go. I think next time once we get that seal, I'll turn the camera on and pull this little snap ring in this washer and see if I can get that on camera too. That might be a trip, because those are kind of a bugger too. Usually you use either a pick or a small screw, and Yeah, they can be fun. So be back with some new seals and keep going. Okay, we're going to pull this shift shaft seal. It's got a small snap ring on it. Washer. Now we're going to try the pick trick. And there we go. Okay, now we're going to pull the main shaft inner race off so we can get to that seal in there. So we use this puller, drops down behind there, and a couple bolts. She's snug. That is where the bearing rides from the inner primary. Here's the inner primary laying down, and that goes over the main shaft, and this goes through the seal. You can get the bearing rollers on there. but it goes through there, and that's what the seal and that inner primary bearing ride on. So now we got to pull this seal, and I'll try to figure out what I'm going to use for that. I'm going to try the pick again. Not having any luck. Oh, it's a little big. Aha. Not pretty, but the shaft is hard, really hard. You just gotta be careful you don't ever pound anything into that or into the lip of the main drive gear. So get it cleaned up and get ready to install the new seals. Okay, here's the new seal. I'm gonna put it A little bit of oil on the inside. And then I'm going to put a little red Loctite on the outside. I'm going to tape that off. You can tape it or use a little plastic bag. Those splines are sharp and they'll cut the lip of that seal. Okay, so that's ready to go. Get this lip of that started on there. I wipe that out inside there real good. Get that started in there. And I'm going to use the driver installer that you use to put that inner race back on. It's a perfect fit for this seal. Just use the installer and push it in. Now we'll put the new shift shaft seal in there. Same thing. Put something over the splines. I'm just going to use tape. And just a little bit of red on this too. This one just uses socket. Might get a 5/8. Okay, this is the back of the inner primary. This is the starter jack shaft seal. All I do is take a screwdriver and pop it out. And this one, just put the screwdriver or pry bar underneath it and just pop it out. They come out easy. I'll just wipe that out a little bit. There's the jack shaft seal. A few years back, Harley started putting their primary gaskets. Let me see if I can get that to focus. Harley started putting their primary gaskets in a kit. So this kit, you get everything to do the inner primary. The main seal, jack shaft seal. This is that starter jack shaft little washer and seal that I was talking about. These are drain plug O-rings, but these are for a little bit newer bike. Derby cover, inspection cover, and the O-ring for the front. So I'll dig out the two seals and we'll get those put in. Got my handy dandy Kershaw. I think it was a leak, but I cut the real sharp tip off because I'd break it off anyways. And they didn't have serrations in it. I made these serrations with a file. These seals go in clean and dry, no seal or anything on them. This big one, I'm going to get something to protect my bench a little bit. You gotta watch out for the dowel pins. Make sure to get around the dowel pins. This is clean. Just want to make sure it's pretty dry. And it goes in just like this. Get it started. I don't have a regular socket big enough, but this is my main drive gear nut socket. Just gonna use that to seat it. Okay, now the jack shaft seal, we gotta flip it over. Give you a look down in the bore there. It goes down in this counter bore. And that one goes in just like this, with that lip that'll go through the primary a little bit. Just set it down in there square, and then I use this is just a cheap impact socket. A little bit bigger than the seal. That one came out nice. Sometimes these are like rubber coated on the outside, and sometimes those peel. That one didn't. That one came out nice. So now that's pretty much ready to go. I didn't get carried away with cleaning the oil out of there. It's just gonna get covered with oil again anyways. Now we just take this old O-ring off of here. Clean this up. There's the new seal, and some guys put grease on them. I've always put a little silicone or gasket maker on them. I just have a ultra gray. And it's just a real light coating on there, just a little bit of a wetness. It's just a little insurance. I'm gonna put just a little smoothie on here. And you can see how I'm wiping it out with my finger. It's just a little thin layer on there, not big gobs of sealer on there. And then I put a little oil on the bearing, and up here in the bushing and the seal. You don't want to have those seals start out dry. And then reach in there and put some oil inside that jack shaft seal. And slip around there. Just watch the end of that shaft on that new seal. Just like that. A little bit of blue Loctite on these bolts. They give you new lock tabs in the kit. They even give you an extra. About the only extra thing you ever get from Harley. Just wipe the bolts off. The lock tabs have two of these bend over tabs on the outside and this longer single tab on the inside is what catches on the primary, just like that. So we put a little blue on this. These back here that go into the transmission on this bike are all the same size. Some bikes have, it was the older Softails had different lengths. Line up that lock tab. Just bring it up snug till we get them all in there. That one's not started. Putting the starter back in. Yeah, that's the only bad thing about these ball Allens. Get a regular Allen, tighten that up. Now we put our jack shaft back in there. Gear. Take these old washers off. New lock. And a new seal. And that goes on there. This one goes first, that tab facing in, and then the seal with the seal facing in. That goes just like that. Let me put a little blue on that. Then you put that lock tab, goes right in the top of that jack shaft. Run it in. And hold it like that. Snug her down. And bend your lock over. Just like that. Now I did clean these before, but you want to make sure these are clean for the Loctite to work. Clean these. See where your seals are going to go. A little on there for the clutch. And we put a lot on the compensator. Slide this on. Line up your splines. And this one was tight before, so probably just have to tap it on there. Make sure your chain is over top of your tensioner. Just like that. And the front should spin on that sprocket shaft extension. And we'll get the nuts cleaned up and get those on. Clean these out. There's the outside of the compensator. Got all that old crusty Loctite in there. Okay, now we're gonna set our chain adjustment. Good right there. Snug her down 9/16, and I cleaned off these two standoffs right there. We're gonna put these stick-on gaskets on there. This is the same height as our cover gasket area, so this gets it to the same crush on there. Just stick them on there. Put our clutch adjuster in there. New snap ring. There we go. And there's the two tabs where the adjuster locks in, so I always put the snap ring on the opposite side. So now that we think it's in there, just give it a little squeeze and it should spin. Yeah, so that's how you know it's in the groove. And set our preload while we're there. Just lightly bottom it. Actually, you know what? I gotta back off the cable. Hang on a second. Seven sixteenths and 9/16. Loosen up the lock nut. Run the adjuster in. Got a bunch of slack up here. Okay, so now we'll lightly seat it like that. This guy likes more play in the clutch. He wants 3/4 of a turn on this adjustment. So we lightly seat it there, back it out 3/4 of a turn. Snug that nut down, get my wrench. Like that. Double check it with the ratchet. Good. Okay. Double check the cover gasket here. One thing I forgot to do, bend over those lock tabs. So I'm going to reach in there and do that. Okay, so we got our new... Yeah, I bent over those lock tabs in there. I forgot about that. I usually do. New cover gasket. I wiped down the cover. The surface is nice and clean. Fits on the dowels. Long bolts go in these longer bosses here. Make sure our two small gaskets are in the right place, and they are. Put the gasket on there. Good there. Clean up our drain plug. I always put Teflon on these, even though they have an O-ring. I always put Teflon on them. Just keeps the threads from binding up. It gives you a little insurance on the seal, but it just makes it nice and smooth going in there. Do that on the engine and transmission drain plugs too. Even though they have an O-ring, just put a little Teflon on there. Okay, you're ready for oil. He bought a Jag Specialties primary oil. I always run Harley oil, but he wanted something that was more clear looking. We'll see what this looks like. And try to pour what we can in here. Yeah, it's pretty much clear looking. This takes about, I think it's 28 ounces. I usually just fill it up until the oil is right up against the bottom of the clutch pack. Not very good lighting, is it? A little better. I don't think you'll be able to see it, but oil is just touching the bottom of the clutch pack, right where it should be. Now we'll put our derby cover back on with a new gasket. This comes in the kit, in that primary kit, but that's the part number for that if you wanted to buy it separate. So I'll just put it on this orange ring goes in, lines up, well, it kind of lines up with that group, but just gives it something else to seal in. So I put it on the back of the cover. The top hole has a little tab that grabs the screw. Like that. Get them all started. Torque them down. Okay, without adjusting the cable, you can see the little bit of lever we have there. And I don't think I can do this one handed. just adjust this out. Adjust that out and keep checking the cable. He likes it to engage early, so we're gonna leave plenty of play in there. A little bit about like that. And snug it down. The nut tightens against the sleeve, not against the threaded adjuster. See, some guys do it wrong, and that doesn't actually lock up the adjuster. Okay, now we'll hook the battery back up. As long as it's still taped up. Just gonna check the positive while I'm in here. That's good. Slide that in. Slide the cover, goes around the battery and inside the box. And cover goes on. See, this little lip goes up against a rubber thing on the frame. Make sure that's in the right place and bring the battery box up and tighten up our bolt. Ratchet wrench. These little Craftsman wrench sockets, actually you could put them inside of another socket if you needed an extension, but with the ratchet wrench and this you get a real nice low profile ratchet. They come in handy. I think the last time I got them I found them on eBay. I'll just make sure rubber thing's in the right place. Snug that up. And then there's the, move you back over here. This holds the battery box up, and then this locks it. Actually, if you were working on the starter or the transmission or something and you wanted to get that battery box out of the way, you could get the battery box out of there completely. You'd take the covers off, unhook the battery, take the battery right out, and then take this bolt out, and you can drop the battery box down, and then it's just a pin on the front, and you just lift the front up and you can take the whole battery box right out of there. Okay, I'll get it wiped down, and we'll get her fired up and take it for a ride. That's the easy start cams you hear popping off at the end. Got easy start cams have a lobe, a little centrifugal weight on the exhaust side, and at low RPM it pops the exhaust valve open to relieve compression for easy start, but you hear them thump thump, you hear them thumping at the end. So that's something that he added. This is a 107-inch custom build, I guess you would call it. He had a guy build it up in upstate New York. It has compression releases also, right next to the spark plug. You just click them down, and then they automatically pop up when you crank it over. So just let it sit here for a minute and check it for leaks, but it should be all set. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope if you know, anybody's looking to dig into their primary at all or service their primary, just wants to know a little bit more about it, I hope that this helps somebody out, and hope you all have a good day. If you want to go back at my other videos, of course, I'd like you to check out the channel. And I had another motorcycle video, was a big dog chopper that I did some carburetor tuning on. You can go back and check that out. I got some videos on my 57 Chevy that I'm putting together. And yeah, I hope you all like the video, and we'll see you on the next one.